Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Today, we are going to discuss that exciting Monday Night Football game, quite possibly the best Monday Night Football game of the entire season between the Broncos and the Browns. What happened? Who shined better than the others? It was so amazing, and if you didn't see it, well, you're living under a rock, let's face it, okay? Also, we're going to talk about what the Broncos are looking forward to going into the bye week. We're also going to talk about everything that's happened since the draft going on till now about our boy, Bo Nix. You don't want to miss it, ladies and gentlemen, so please make sure all the kids are put to bed. Make sure you have your snacks and drinks ready because you are not going to want to miss a single part of today's episode. So here we go.
Broncos talk, let's rock, feel the energy rise. From the microphone to the fans reaching the skies. Every episode a thrill and surprise. For the love of the game, we harmonize.
And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adan Diaz, and I am the owner, founder, and proprietor, I swear I said that right this time, of said show, Broncos Talk. Of course, I'm normally joined by my co-host, Ty the Fantasy Guy, but unfortunately, he's still not joining us. Ty, we love you. We're still thinking about you. We hope you'll be back with us, joining us soon. So shout out and best wishes to him, taking care of his business. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we got a couple of things we got to get out of the way before we get going with today's show, just like we always have in case this is your first time tuning in. If you are a first-time listener, please, I ask of you before anything else, well, first of all, add me on Twitter /X. There's my name right there, at a 6'10" Mexican. And always hit me up, and I'm always down and happy to talk about any and all things football. For any business inquiries, you can email me at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. But after that, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you show your support for us here on the Orange and Blue Network. Make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on the network. There are plenty of shows for you guys to watch. Even if Broncos Talk is not your take and you get tired of seeing this ugly face every day, I promise you there are much better looking gentlemen on this network. And make sure you give them a like. And ladies and gentlemen, we are not just going live on the Orange and Blue Network. We are also going live on the MHRT Network. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their shows and programming. In case you didn't know, that's where I got my first start 4 years ago. And I'm telling you, when I click the buttons, you probably can't see it, but it always excites me when I get to click the MHRT Network share button because it is a part of the Broncos Country media family. I know that's not a thing, but I'm just making it one now. So make sure you go and you show them support. They got a lot of great shows as well over on the MHRT Network. Shout out to my boy Richie Rich, Mundungas, and Glenn Hauser. And if I'm forgetting your name, I apologize. I'm getting old. I'm about to be 40 next year, so I'm starting to forget a lot of stuff, So shout out to our sponsor for today's show, Dubby. For those of you that don't know, Dubby comes in such great flavors, ladies and gentlemen. And as you can see here, they have any and all things that you would like to enjoy. For Dubby, you saw the peach on the previous screen. Right here, you got the Granny Smith apple and secret sauce. I mean, they have something for everybody. It's not just for one. They have the Galaxy Grenade, which is watermelon, guava, and lime explosion. Now, you might be asking yourself, if you're a first-time listener, why should you get Dubby? Great question. I'm about to tell you why. First of all, Dubby was formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including the patented NeuroFactor formula. It also contains no calories, no sugar, no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's just basically all the good stuff without all the bad. Now, what you might be things like energy drinks and coffee, like stimulated coffee or espressos or whatever it is that the young people are putting into coffee nowadays. There's a lot of it. All that stuff. If you talk to anybody that knows about health, will tell you it's bad. You're not supposed to do it. Don't take it. So Grubby Dubby is here to make sure you guys get all the good stuff you need to give you that energy boost to get you going through the day, because I know sometimes I need it. So make sure you go out and get yourself whatever flavor it is that you like. And just to show you guys, in case you missed the last week that they had a sale, don't worry. My good friends over at the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast have got you covered. Use their code NRWOB10 at checkout to get 10% off on whatever flavored Dubby energy drink that you guys want. Energy blend, sorry. So make sure you use the code NRWOB10 at 10% off at checkout to get 10% off, and you can thank Johnny Baki for hooking you up. And Isaiah too, because they're a pair. They go pair and pair. Shout out to Dubby for being a sponsor on today's show. And before I forget, because I know sometimes I do, again, please forgive me, I'm getting old. If you're listening to us on audio after the fact, please make sure you like and subscribe wherever it is you guys get your podcast from and you're listening to us. If you're not able to join us on the live show, make sure you give us a 5-star rating, and share screen, screenshot it, send it to me so I can see that you guys are not just listening to the show, but you're also showing us your support, and it helps me try to figure out how we can become better here, not just on Broncos Talk, but as a network in general. So please make sure to show your support as much as you can. The boss, Johnny Baki, coming in saying, "What it do, boo-boo?" Johnny Baki, thank you so much for joining in, man. It's always great and good to see you, my friend. Hope everything is well with you. Say hi to the family for me. Now, before we continue, just as a heads up, it is a really hella windy day today in Chicago. So, like, in case you hear anything blowing behind me or the curtains or whatever, for us here, it's, they don't call us a windy city for nothing. So there is a wind advisory. There's like 40 to 50 miles per hour wind. So we've been hearing a lot of stuff just kind of flying around in our backyard over the last few hours. So just in case you hear that, it's not ghost, we're not haunted, and it's not some crazy neighbor across the street. Dreamweaver saying, "Howdy ho, Ranger Joe." Dreamweaver, my friend, how you doing, man? And before I forget, because I know you're a fan, go Bulls. And go Blackhawks. Oh, I think I just made whatever he's holding in his hand just a whole lot warmer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the reason you guys are here tonight. We are going to recap the Monday Night Football game that was Monday Night Football between the Browns and the Broncos. As you guys heard me say at the beginning of the show, we're also going to go over the title of today's show, which is 2024 Whodathunkit. By the way, shout out to Johnny Baki for helping me think of a title, because I kind of had a writer's block. Couldn't think of one today. So he's always good to kind of throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks type of thing. But this game on Monday Night Football was, if it's not the game of the year or the best Monday Night Football game in terms of setting the bar, it's a damn shame. Okay. I mean, you had everything that you needed. It could have almost been like a whole season's worth episode of a show. If Monday Night Football had its own show, it could have been its own season. You could have literally broken it into quarters and turned it into a season. Some crazy stuff like that. Okay. The point is, it was great. It had everything you needed. It had Bo Nix. It had whatever the hell Jameis Winston is doing or taking that's got him acting like a free spirit, and the revenge game of one Jarius Judy. You know what? I had a better name for him in my head, but I'm just going to go with Jerry Judy. And then the defense completely going the opposite way of being a top 5 defense in terms of secondary. Ladies and gentlemen, what we saw out of Levi Wallace this past Monday night was a travesty. It was a god-awful travesty. There is no way I would have let that man back into the locker room. Okay. I would have told, if I was Sean Payton, no lie, straight up, I would have told Levi, man, you don't even, you're not, just go change in your car, bro, or just drive home in your gear. Change out when you get to your house. Like, because it was that bad of a game. And before I continue, Dreamweaver pointing out a good point. Did you hear that Peyton Manning refused to do the Manning cast because he wanted to be in the stadium? He's a Bronco for life. You hear that, Colts fans? I know you're not listening to this game show, or to this week's show. I mean, you might be listening to next week's show when we recap the upcoming matchup against the Colts, but he is a Bronco for life. Now, you might get lucky because maybe Peyton Manning will be here for that game too. You know, he'll be honored twice by the two teams he played for, and then we can play who does he love more, like they did a couple years ago when the last time Colts and Broncos faced off. So, but it made me very proud to hear that. Unfortunately, I didn't see any pictures of him out on the field. I did see a video of there was a fan that got like surprise on the field tickets, and they, unfortunately, when they got there, they had just missed Peyton Manning. So unfortunately, it sucks. They didn't get to see him. But there were a couple people that said they saw him. They didn't really know who he was. I'm guessing he was all bundled up, so he wasn't his obvious, like you could spot him from a mile away self. But shout out to Peyton Manning for coming on the house and getting to see that game live with everybody else out on the field. So, but going back to Levi Wallace, that was a damn shame. It was almost like there was nobody opposite of Paxton Sand II. And the question I've been hearing a lot from a lot of people that have been asking the last 2 days is, why didn't Vance Joseph have PS2 stick on Judy? And I heard two reasons, and they both make sense to me. The first one was, I heard that, now I'm not the most like numbers and zeros and ones type of football guy. Unfortunately, that's just not the person I am. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, the schematics and how to run that. That's why I'm terrible at Madden. But some of the plays that Vance Joseph runs, the disguises he runs and stuff, don't always include sticking to their best receiver. So that's why sometimes you saw Paxton Sand sticking to whatever the number 2 or number 3 wide receiver was. So that to me made sense, and it would have been a little bit more harder to hide, I think, if they did go into like formations or whatever, where it was just kind of like, even if you limit Jerry Jeudy, and which leads to the second point that somebody else made, it wouldn't really matter because Levi Wallace was, he was gonna get beat. If he wasn't gonna get beat by Jerry Jeudy, he would have gotten beaten by Elijah Moore or the other young cat, Woods. Those 3 guys would have owned him on any given night. That's just because Levi Wallace was just a fish out of water. He didn't belong. He didn't play great. He gave up so many yards. And then sometime in the second half, I didn't even notice it. Brandon Jones went out with a groin injury. And I didn't notice it until I saw Key in there with PJ Locke. And I'm like, well, why the hell is Key in the game? Like, I didn't remember hearing nothing about no injury timeout or nothing. So, but thank God that Key did not play anywhere close to as bad as what we saw out of him against the Ravens a couple weeks ago. That's right up there with what we saw out of Wallace. Like, those 2 game plays go hand in hand. Like, it was just terrible. And I will say, and I've said this all the last 2 days, I'll give Jerry Jeudy his flowers. Because when he made his statement, he made it basically saying and his statement before the game was on point, mind you, where he basically said, that's what you do when you go to another team and you go back to your former team. That's just the animosity that you bring with you. You want to beat them, even you want to show them what they lost out on, kind of thing. But that last part didn't really make sense because Jerry Jeudy asked to be traded. He wasn't just automatically traded. But even if he didn't ask for it, I think his name was still on the table. So that goes to him. And, he did on the stat sheet. Oh, he totally kicked ass. Not going to lie to you. And he took advantage of a situation where any person in his position would have done the same. And you kind of saw it when Denzel Ward went out. When Ward went out, when he got the cramps or hamstring, I think it was, the Broncos offense started taking advantage of that because it becomes whoever their number 2 and number 3 is, that becomes a liability. And that's exactly what the Broncos were in that position. At least Levi Wallace was. Because if that was Riley Moss out there, oh, there's no way. Jerry Jeudy probably does get some yardage and maybe that touchdown, a touchdown, I should say. But there's no way the Broncos secondary gets cooked that way. No freaking way whatsoever. And Jerry Jeudy knows it. Okay. And he's just lucky that this game wasn't a week 15 game and not a week 13, and it was a week 13 game. Okay. And regardless, going back to my previous point, even though he did win the battle on the stat sheet, in the end, he lost the war. Because he flew back to Cleveland with that entire team of Browns players all holding that same L. And this was a game that the Browns really needed to win because they're trying to stay somewhat relevant in their division. And now they got to face Russell Wilson round 2 and try to hope to get them going in terms of beating them. And I'm pretty sure they're all hoping that they get another foot of snow to kind of help them out like they got help last week. So if you honestly, there's a part of me, and this is just my personal opinion, there's a part of me that believes that if Jerry Jeudy could change it where if he could not have this as much of a statistical day as he had, but still get the win, I think Jerry Jeudy chooses that over the statistics. Just for the simple reason that, and this goes out for you fantasy players out there who are, I'm pretty sure Jerry Jeudy is probably like the number 1 pick wide receiver if it was on anybody's free agent list. Like, don't expect that type of consistency from Jeudy. All right. He's going to put up some numbers, but I don't think it's going to be the numbers that you saw against Denver because Levi Wallace doesn't play for other teams. Unfortunately, he still plays for the freaking Broncos and hopefully not for long. So before we get to the comments, just want to put that out there because I've been seeing a lot of people give like high praise and making Jerry Jeudy sound like he was the next Jerry Rice. So I did have to put my foot down on it. Again, giving the man his flowers. If you follow me on Twitter at a 6'10" Mexican, you even saw me. I tagged him in a message. I'm pretty sure he doesn't read his tweets from unknown fans or whatever, but I did give him his flowers and say, hey, man, congrats. Kind of weird seeing you out there in a non-Broncos uniform, but hey, it is what it is. Enjoy the L. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to say that. So let's get to some of the comments here, people. Back to Johnny Baki saying, Peyton is a true Bronco. He still lives in Denver, is always at the facilities, and never does anything with the Colts organization. Read the writing on the wall, LOL. Oh, man. Agreed, my friend. Agreed. D-Rock jumping in saying, hey, Don, D-Rock, my friend, how you doing? My high salute to you, brother. Hope everything is good. Boo Bronco's going to show up as Dreamweaver. You know what? I saw him at Nothing Rhymes With last night, and maybe I'm not popular enough for him to be here, or he had something to do. God only knows. Dreamweaver saying Damari Mathis deserves his flowers. Yeah, I'm just not even going to say none of that because I didn't even know Damari Mathis was out there. Johnny Baki jumping back in. He's saying the front office wanted him the hell out of here. He was a locker room cancer. And I believe he's talking about Jerry Jeudy. And I did hear that too. Dreamweaver also jumping in and saying Jerry would have had negative 200 yards if Mathis was on him all game. And I totally believe it. I totally believe it. Just like there was somebody on Twitter who was like, oh, Jerry Jeudy is cooking Patrick Surtain. And I'm like, what game are you watching? Just because Patrick Surtain is letting him get anything under him? Like, I would probably let that go too. As long as you don't run past me or near me, you're not going to get anything like that. You know what I'm saying? But if you want to get anything under and you want to stat, your little couple 5 yards, hey, go for it, man. Go for it. But as far as I know, Jerry Jeudy ain't run buck wild on Patrick Surtain, and he knows it. I wish I could relive because they did have a little, interaction at the end of the game, and I'm pretty sure they was jawing at each other. it was that friendly John, but it was like, hey man, like you lucky I didn't get on you. And there was actually, I take that back. There was a clip towards the end of that where you can hear PS2 kind of saying like, man, I wanted to shadow you all day. And I'm pretty sure that's true. But unfortunately, he's got to do what his DC tells him to do. So, but whoever that guy was, I should have tagged him or responded to him when I seen it on Twitter. That guy was on something, man. That guy was on something. I don't know what game he was watching. But Jameis Winston, again, giving my flowers out to Jameis Winston because what he did out there was mad respect. There is no way that game is that epic with Deshaun Watson. Okay. Let's just put that out there before and everything. Granted, famous Jameis is, I don't know what the hell he does in terms of his pregame ritual, but it's weird, but it's funny weird. And it's funny weird because I'm not a Browns fan. But just the fact that he was going, and God bless him if he didn't play his ass off. I mean, the man was out there slinging it. He had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 of them were pick sixes. And he just went out there. And David Njoku, I'm telling you guys, I will die on this hill. The Broncos should have went and got David Njoku. They should have traded for him. And I'm pretty sure, and this is just a wild guess, they may try to make a move for him in the offseason, especially if the Browns become sellers. And I don't think they have a cap hell issue, but if the right offer comes along, hopefully Denver can get a tight end like him. Because, I mean, we saw what a great tight end can do for a player. I mean, just look at Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers for the Raiders. I mean, that guy he's literally about to carry my cousin into a championship. So, fantasy-wise. So, like, if you can get a guy like and you saw what he did. I mean, in that first touchdown by Winston, if Cody Barton would have just stayed in place for one more second, he picks that ball off. But unfortunately, he had to move. I think he was in coverage or it was man or something, but I just saw him move straight to the left. As soon as I saw that, I knew it was a touchdown. Just for the simple fact that I think it was Wallace who was covering Njoku. And in the second one, I mean, there was nothing. Can't blame Brandon Jones on that one. I mean, that was just a toss-up ball. And Brandon Jones, unfortunately, couldn't make a play quick enough to try to, knock the ball out of Njoku's hands. Njoku was falling backwards, and he made sure to clutch the ball. So that just goes as a testament of how good David Njoku is. And I say that because I drafted in my fantasy draft. I drafted Njoku, and the first 2 games he played like complete crap, and I dropped him like an idiot. And now he's playing really, really well for somebody else in my fantasy league, and it pisses me off every time I think about it. D-Rock coming in and asking, did they extend Njoku? You know what? I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to sit here and tell you yes or no. But the Browns would be damn fools to not sign him and to let him go. I'll tell you that much. On one hand, the Browns have so many issues they have to worry about this offseason, and it all relegates to Deshaun Watson. And the growing trend now, if you guys have noticed, is that teams are literally just letting quarterbacks go, and they're eating the dead cap hit. So regardless of what you did in the past, regardless of what your name is, and regardless of what a future without you looks like, teams are willing to bite the bullet in order to start over again. Denver with Russell Wilson. The Giants with Daniel Jones, although the issue with Daniel Jones and the Giants is a whole lot worse. And the 2 names that I believe are going to be next on that list in this offseason are Deshaun Watson and the Browns and Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And I'll get more into Aaron Rodgers and the Jets when we get into tonight's segment of Broncos Talk OT. But the Browns are kind of in a situation where they were with Joe Flacco last year, except much worse. They kind of got lucky. Joe Flacco fell into their hands and they went on a winning streak and they went straight to the playoffs. And then just ran into a brick wall. So that unfortunately sucks. They're trying to kind of replicate what happened last year, but with Jameis Winston. But Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco are two very different players, obviously. So they're not playing like a team that's just like, okay, we're just going to go out there and do whatever. They're playing like a team that's trying to win a damn division. So I will give them credit for that. Also, our offensive line showed up and they kept Myles Garrett at bay, which is something you don't really hear a lot of, especially when you talk about a guy like Myles Garrett. But I will play devil's advocate on that. He was missing his counterpart on the opposite side. So when you don't have somebody counterparting you to bring that type of Myles Garrett pressure, it really falls on you. And like all the pressure falls on you to try to be great, just kind of by yourself. Kind of like a Von Miller-ish type of thing. Now, I will say that I did see an issue with Myles Garrett's shoulder at one point, and he did have to sit out a couple plays. So I'm kind of wondering if that lingering shoulder issue kind of stuck its head out again, and it kept him from playing at his best. I don't know. But I'm not going to take anything away from the offensive line, because if you suit up and you go out there, you're going to go out there and play if you're not at 100% and you're willing to put whatever you can do and go out there to the best of your ability, then hey, go for it. But if you do that, then you're definitely going to be judged on what it is that you bring to the table. But this was a barn burner, ladies and gentlemen. It really was. And shout out to Nick freaking Bonito. I mean, it is anything short of a miracle that man did not win Defensive Player of the Week, AFC Player of the Week on defense. I mean, the man was damn near, he could have bought real estate to live in Jameis Winston's in his house. I mean, the man was there. He was bringing the pressure. How great is it to see Zach Allen back in there again? I mean, the man can do no harm. And I will say, and maybe this is just me, but I do feel that a little bit Zach Allen was kind of not at 100% because some of his rushes were not his normal bull style rushes. So I do think that his foot is kind of not at 100% yet. It's getting there. And hopefully this bye week comes and does him a whole lot of good, and he's back to his old self by next week, the following week, I should say, against the Colts. So, but when he does get in there and he forces the quarterback to either scramble to Cooper's side or to Nick Bonito's side, I mean, it is just freaking beautiful. And sometimes when he doesn't and the quarterback gets brave and wants to challenge it and, try to stay in the pocket, that's the worst thing you can do, because Zach Allen's coming for you, baby. And he's coming for that sack. Oh, and I still think that the Broncos need to upgrade his counterpart in the offseason. If they can get somebody that can get in there, because I can't think of his name, who also lines up as next to him. But I think I barely heard his name for the first time in a long time this week. Aside from that, it's just kind of like whatever. But I mean, Nick Bonito, he had, I can't remember how many pressures off the top of my head, but he did have that interception. I mean, couldn't have played it any better himself and read it and ran it just like it needed to be run. Now, the Broncos defense did give up over 500 yards, and that is a big concern. And I know what you're going to say, because Levi Wallace, totally granted. Levi Wallace sucks. He should never see another day in a Broncos uniform ever again. But it does bring up the concern about depth. In terms of, depth was actually one of the things that really concerned me going into the season, especially at cornerback, because, as good as Riley Moss is getting and as good as PS2 is, when those guys got hurt and they didn't see the field, the liability was there. Okay, we saw it against the Chargers, and we were lucky we didn't see it against the Saints. But going forward, like, this is the time where injuries, and I don't know if I said this on the show, but I'm saying it again. This is the time where injuries, like even something as small as missing a week, can be really significant. And if you don't believe me, just look at the Lions defense. The Lions defense is literally going into tomorrow's game with more tape than anything. So, but and I know there's a next man up mentality, and I know that's great because I've said that on the show before. However, there is a reason why ones are ones and twos are twos, and then to a lesser extent threes and fours. And unfortunately, when you put a 2 against a 1, the 1's always gonna win. Just ask Jerry Jeudy. And it is really hard to have whoever your secondary backup is to be as good as your starting. It's almost impossible in some cases. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is, and that's just the way the league is. Which also brings me to another point about Bo Nix. And this is from that idiot Nick Wright. I know Nick Wright doesn't watch this show because he's a Chiefs fan and he's so delusional out of his freaking mind. But I just think he hates Bo Nix just for the simple fact that he's a Broncos fan or he's a Broncos player. I can't even remember verbatim what he said on Colin Cowherd's show, but it was just a bunch of crap. How he feels that Bo Nix isn't the guy. And he just falls in line with all the people at the beginning of the season, which is also the title of today's show again. 2024. Whodathunkit. Basically, going into this season, after Bo Nix's name was picked in the draft, and all the analysts just hit the airwaves, and they were already talking smack about Denver. If you go on TikTok like I do, you'll see it. You can just look up Denver Broncos, and it'll be more likely be like the first one, the second, and it's like a compilation video that somebody made where they take the analysis that one person made at the beginning of the season or during the off season, and then just a bunch of Bo Nix highlights, and then it's like a booyah at the end. So it warms my heart because I unfortunately am not a college. I don't watch college football. I try. Honest to God, I try, but I just get so lost in it because there's so much going on, and I usually rely on my cousin because my cousin's usually the one that knows, who to look out for, who's going to be, aside from whoever wins the Heisman, of course. But who's kind of who's on the radar for so and so, and it's like the first 2 rounds for me are like the most interesting. Anything after the first 2 rounds, I'm totally lost in terms of who's who. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't know who Bo Nix was until after he was selected, and I started doing my research on him, and it's like, okay, great, he's from Oregon. Oregon has given the NFL 2 good quarterbacks so far. Justin Herbert, give him his flowers. He's done a pretty decent job since he took the helm for the Chargers. And it's just kind of like when all the negativity just came down from everybody outside of Broncos country, like I gotta be honest with you, it was heavy. It was heavy, like, man, it just got harder to kind of just stand in front of them as wearing your orange and blue colors and say, hey man, you guys are gonna be wrong, man. Like, you guys got it wrong. And just for the simple fact that we had no basis on saying that, even though I said it to everybody, I was like, yeah, man, Bo's gonna be great. Like, don't worry about it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, I've never even seen Bo throw a freaking football. But it's just the confidence that starts building in you as you get closer to training camp and you see any whatever acquisitions your team made during the free agency period, or trades, like all that stuff. When you see all that stuff come together, like, it starts to kind of click. And then you see the preseason, and Bo was just amazing. And you're like, wow. And then, of course, the haters came back out. It's the second and third stringers. Of course, Bo's going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And my counterpoint to that was like, okay, if it's just second and third stringers and blah, 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 then why did Zach Wilson struggle and almost throw interceptions? And to a certain extent, Jason Stidham. How come they didn't light up the board like they should have? But Bo Nix did. So it's just kind of like, all right then, shut the hell up. And then Bo Nix and Sean Payton just take the NFL by storm after week 3, I want to say. That first win against Tampa, a team that nobody expected the Broncos to win. My God, was that a thing of beauty. I mean, just effing beautiful. And then going up against the Jets and beating them, and then coming back home and beating the Raiders, shellacking the Raiders. The Broncos season going into this bye week at 8-5 has been just fan-freaking-tastic. And it has shut up so many people. I forget the name of the guy. I think I mentioned this on last week's show. So was it Tony, not Tony. Tico. Something Tico. That guy has gotten so much backlash from Broncos Country that he actually made a video asking people to shut up and leave him alone. On one side, it was like a parody video, but on the other side, because he got tagged so much by people in Broncos Country because he was wrong. Basically saying that, Bo Nix wasn't going to be the guy and Sean Payton was going to get fired and the Broncos were going to be in the basement, one of the worst teams in the league. And I'll admit, if you guys have heard me since the beginning of the season, I was kind of like optimistic. Like I had doubts. Like, I'm like, well, if we're going to be bad, then we might as well be bad with Bo Nix, see what we got with him. And then somewhere along the line, after I saw those preseason games, I turned ship. And I'm like, well, you know what? We're going to be bad with Jason Stidham and Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson. Like, we need to have Bo Nix if we're going to have a chance, and if we're going to be bad, then we're going to be bad. But at least, Bo Nix gets the rookiness, out the way. And then, he becomes that gunslinger that we keep so much hearing about next season. And here we are at the bye week. Broncos are 8-5, which, by the way, before I forget, Ty and I, as you heard us say last week, I had the Browns winning, and the Browns won, and he had the Browns losing. So 8-5 at this point is just freaking amazing. I mean, it is beyond incredible. And the fact that, and you guys heard us say it on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue show, which airs every Tuesday, then they said it best, that the Broncos are now the ones that are being chased for a playoff spot in terms of being the ones that are trying to play into one. And that's a great feeling to have, because now the Broncos have their future secured in them. It's up to them to get to the playoffs, to break this 9-year-old curse that has been hanging over Broncos Country since 2015. I mean, just think about how long ago that was. Since the last time the Broncos hoisted a Lombardi trophy over their head, they haven't been able to say we're going back to the playoffs in 9 years. In 9 excruciating years, time and time again, quarterback after quarterback, bad season after some mid-tier season, and then a somewhat good season, and then a bad one. And the Broncos either fell short by an inch or they fell by a mile. No pun intended. But the grit of the team was always there. What was that saying that they said? It was like living in a world of suck. Except that it felt like every time the Broncos tried to blast off the world of suck, they just got pulled back down by gravity itself. And the head coaches didn't work, the offensive coordinators didn't work, and the quarterbacks, all these changes and acquisitions, and it just felt like it didn't freaking work. And then the Broncos go and trade their draft pick that they got from Miami for what they got in compensation for Bradley Chubb, which was a late first rounder, to acquire the rights to hire Sean Payton after Nathaniel Hackett got shown the door. And I'll be the first to admit, I'll eat crow on this. I was really skeptical about Sean Payton, but I figured if having a young guy as the head coach wasn't the way to go and it made the Broncos even worse, then let's go with somebody that's experienced, that has taken a team that's played like crap and literally turned them into a playoff and eventually a championship caliber team. Let's go with that. And I really thought that Sean Payton and I were going to be like on the wrong end of the spectrum right away after he got rid of Russell Wilson. I was really not for that. You know what I mean? I was really against it. I thought Russell Wilson should have stayed. That's what the Broncos paid for. And, they made their bed, they have to lay in it type of thing. However, it just, like, Bo Nix and this whole thing just kind of started to grow on me. And that's not to take away anything from Russell Wilson. Hey, he's doing great in Pittsburgh. I mean, he's playing like he's being played. The only thing that irks me about it is that he's playing good while Denver's paying him. So he's playing good in a non-Broncos uniform. So it's just like it's kind of bananas. Yeah. So I definitely will, boss. I definitely will. I'm sorry. But it's just kind of like it's weird. One of the hardest things to do on any type of show, at least I think so, is coming on here and saying you're wrong about stuff. There's a lot of things that I don't remember I said that somebody will come back and correct me and say, hey, remember when you said blah, 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 blah? Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I was wrong. My bad. Some people will never go on the air and say, hey, man, I was wrong. They'll just pretend they never said it. Until somebody brings it up to them and then literally shows them a video of them saying it, then it's kind of like, oh, well, different times or some bull crap like that. For me, if I'm wrong about something, I'm wrong. But if I'm right about something, oh, you're going to have to tell me to literally shut up about it. And I wish I can sit here and tell you guys that I knew all along that Bo Nix was going to be the guy. But unfortunately, I cannot. Just for the simple fact that I was still on my horses. And to kind of illustrate my point, I'm probably the only person. I only heard one other Broncos fan say this to me that still says let's ride. Hell, I don't know where the hell I left my cup. I have my cup somewhere in my room that says let's ride. I got it from the actual stadium, not this year, but the last time I was there, second to last time I was there. So that's something that a lot of people, as soon as Russell left town, they kind of like left with him and all of his gimmicks and quotes and all that stuff. So rightfully so. But I felt, and I still feel, that let's ride is something that's just should be stuck with Broncos country because they're Broncos. And that's what Broncos do. They ride. So I get it. It came with Russell Wilson, and I'm surprised that at least from, I haven't heard anything that the Steelers fans are over there saying about, let's melt or meld or, whatever it is that you do with steel, something catchy or dumb like that. I'm surprised that isn't a thing by now. But for me, let's ride is still one of those cool things. And it's probably like the last thing I have to hold on to in terms of, what Russell Wilson did in Denver. Granted, he had a lot of bad moments, but he did have some good moments here. And again, I will say this every time I need to do before we go to the comments. I'd rather deal with everything that we've dealt with Russell Wilson than to deal with what the Jets are dealing with Aaron Rodgers. I'll die on that hill too. I definitely will. A name I haven't seen here in a while, Shy Vargas saying, how about them Broncos, baby? Shy, how you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for joining the show. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much for your support. And definitely, how about them Broncos? D-Rock saying, Nick takes are beyond ridiculous on Knicks. Yeah, Nick Wright is just, he's a straight up moron. I'm sorry, man. Shy also thinking, jumping in saying, do you think we will make the playoffs? But before we get to that, let's just go. D-Rock saying, low key, having a competent coach feels great. It couldn't agree with you more, D-Rock. Couldn't agree with you more. And if you don't believe me, just look at what the Bears here where I live in are going through in terms of, Caleb Williams and finding a competent coach. The boss, Johnny Bach, is saying, Denver Broncos, we ride, baby. Woo! D-Rock also jumping in saying, Mile High Country, it's a vibe. Definitely so much true. But going back to your question, Shy, do the Broncos make the playoffs? Without a shadow of a doubt, I do agree. However, somebody pointed out to me, and I saw this on a tick, and I didn't think about it anything sooner, just how important the next game coming up against the Colts is going to be, which we will get into further on next week's episode. But in terms of strength, after the Colts game, the Broncos face off against the Chargers for round 2, then the Bengals, and then they close out the season against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, so far, depending on where they are at statistically at the end of the year, it could be another tough game or it could be an easy game if they play their starters, if they don't have a bye, the number 1 bye secured. The Colts, on the other hand, I think they faced the Jaguars, the Giants, and I forget, like, their schedule is so super soft. So it's kind of like one of those, it's like where Denver can't really, take their foot off the gas. They have to win this game against the Colts to kind of keep them off their heels. They're going to have a lot of teams that are vying for that for that playoff spot, especially if Denver isn't able to elevate itself up into a higher seeding, like a 6th or a 5th, So this week's matchups in the AFC that are vying for that spot are very crucial and detrimental into where the Broncos are fixing to get to in terms of the playoff season. So again, I'm not taking anything. I always believe in my Broncos, and I definitely will say that they will make the playoffs. It's up to them to make sure that statement comes to fruition, because if we have to have a really difficult conversation in a month's time where the Broncos miss out on the playoffs again, like they did last year, then we're going to have some really uncomfortable conversations. And then the finger pointing is definitely going to, this finger's going to be spinning, man. It's just, but you won't be able to blame it on one person. You're going to have to blame it on a whole bunch of other people, because then, as we see in this front office, they're not afraid to let heads roll. The boss, Johnny Bach, jumping back in. He's saying, with our Monday night win, our chances of making the playoffs are now 80%. Come on, man. Not bad for a team that was given an over-under of 5.5 games at the beginning of the season. Definitely true. And you said it on your show, boss. You've definitely made that point clear. However, we have to be optimistic and we have to be realistic at the same time, where we don't want to be too comfortable where we think we're, no pun intended, on our high horse. Okay. What we saw out of the defense was a huge liability, and it was a bad day at the office for Vance Joseph in terms of not being to correctly acclimate the defense for most of the game. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm not saying blame Vance Joseph or fire him, as some people have stated in Broncos country. I think they're just looking for attention. But the calls just have to be made a little bit better. But again, if there's a kink in the Denver Broncos defense, it's the fact that we don't have depth. And while some teams are barely able to get by it, this defense cannot give up 500 yards, especially at home at that, and expect to win football games. They got really lucky that Jameis Winston made 3 really, really terrible mistakes. 2 of them that the defense made them pay for. Shout out to Jaquan McMillan, by the way, for that awesome pick return. And for Nick Bonito being able to literally run the ball into the end zone and not having to, get tackled or anything. The man was just going back. And you're right, Shy. We give so much credit to Vance Joseph for he turned the season around. Totally agree. Thank God he's had more good games than bad. And there will be bad games like this. And unfortunately, while this was a win and we're all celebrating it, it also has to kind of be seen that it's one of those ugly wins. Okay. But a win is still a win and it still counts and it's still dub week. All right. Especially going into the bye. D-Rock also says it's funny because 10 and 7 teams seem really, really likely because early this season, 10 plus wins seems so far-fetched. Totally agree. And again, that ties into the theme of today's show. Whodathunkit? And that's literally what I'm going to say to everybody I meet going on until the end of the season. Probably for even after that. Because I get Uber passengers that ask me all the time when they see my Denver gear, like, hey, you're a Broncos fan. What do you think of Sean Payton? What do you think of Bo Nix? And that's how every conversation is going to start with. Whodathunkit? It's thank God we're not at the bottom of the basement like the Raiders are. The boss Baki jumping in saying, were they really that terrible of mistakes made by Winston? Or did our boys just play the way this defense plays? I prefer to think it's the latter. Now, I agree. I will say, when I saw Key in there coming in for Jones, because I didn't know he was hurt, I became really, really critical and concerned about where the defense was because they were already playing with a man down in terms of Riley Moss, and now their starting safety was down. And now you had Wallace and Key out there, and then they brought in the other young cat towards the end. I can't think of his name, but I think he was the third stringer, and he played better than Wallace out there. Granted, he did draw an unnecessary flag, but he can only do what he's been, trained to do. Shai Vargas saying, if the Broncos make the playoffs, how far can they go? That's a little bit too hard to tell right now, Shai, just for the simple fact that we won't know until probably like that question will probably more than likely be answered like either at the end of week 17 or week 18 when we get a better idea of who we're going up against in the AFC, especially if the Broncos don't move up any of the seeding. I really hope that the Broncos can push past the Super Wildcard weekend because getting bounced out in the very first round is just heartbreaking. It's almost just right out there with not even making the playoffs. And what I don't want the Broncos to be known as is to be one of those teams that just gets in, not especially because they did win their division, but just because we saw it last year. Look at the Eagles last year. They got totally destroyed by the Bucs, and they looked like they had no business going into that playoff season and being in there. So that's where I don't want the Broncos to be. Now, right now, if you're talking about projections, if the season were to end today, I think the Broncos would face the Bills. And the Bills right now are just on a buzzsaw. They're taking people out, and not even the Chiefs were able to survive their wrath. And the Chiefs are a whole different story. But it's kind of like we can avoid the Bills in the first round and make it to like the divisional or, dare I say, championship round. Like the sky's the limit. But I am really optimistic, and I'm trying to keep it balanced because the playoffs are a whole different beast. On the other hand, okay, and there are some teams that can just activate it. And as we've seen in previous years, just because you're the number one seed doesn't always mean you're going to win the whole thing, okay? We've seen that before. There have been, in the Super Bowl playoffs history, there have been teams in different seedings that were not number one that have went on and won the Super Bowl. So they will make it to the Super Bowl and actually win it. So I really do hope that the Broncos can go as far as Bo Nix can take them, as far as the coaching can take them, and as far as this defense can take them. Because when this defense clicks and it's going on and it does what it has to do and it doesn't have to worry about liabilities like Levi freaking Wallace, then they're one of the best. They're one of the best. I mean, so far, the defense has only had 2 bad games. and that was against the Ravens. And this game, bad in terms of statistics, where they gave up a whole bunch of yards, and they're better than that. The only difference is they lost against the Ravens, but they won against the Browns. So while they did make mistakes and whatnot, they were able to show redemption. The Nick Bonito interception and the Jaquan McMillan interception, and then the Cody Barton interception, which even though he didn't get take it back for a score, he was able to put the final nail on the coffin. And how ironic that he got tackled by Jerry Jeudy, of all people. The boss Baki coming in and reminding me, my boy Chris Abrams Drain, Mizzou, baby. That's right. It was Chris Abrams Drain. Thank you so much for that, boss. It was a good reminder. Shy Vargas jumping in and saying, we need Riley Moss so bad. Again, just like the week before, when it comes to contract talks, Zach Allen is going to pull up that game where he missed against the Raiders and say, this is why you should pay me money to play. Just like Riley Moss can go to them when it's time for contract talks and say, this is why you should pay me, so guys like Jerry Jeudy don't embarrass your secondary. And him and PS2 just work so well together. They honestly do. So, unfortunately, that's going to come at a price for the Broncos. But if Riley Moss continues to improve like I think he is, then that's a price that I'd be willing to pay. So as we get towards the 1 hour mark, just to kind of summarize the game and what it was about, Bo Nix played really good. Okay, it wasn't his best game of the season, but he played really good. That deep pass, the first interception, that wasn't on Bo. I don't put that on him, even though statistically he's going to get it on him. It was just a very low pass, and unfortunately, instead of going straight down, it went straight up. But that was a play that was made by their cornerback Denzel Ward. The second one, though, trying to play hero ball when you really didn't need to. I know a lot of people that I've seen on podcasts so far say they don't play Bo Nix, but like I can understand if he was trying to draw a flag, which I'm pretty sure maybe that was he was trying to do, or if it was like, hey, we need this, so it's like he's out there somewhere. But the Broncos just needed, if he would have just tiptoe, zigzagged and do what Bo Nix does, and then just just wear out the defense and just get them down there safely without putting the ball in any danger, then I'd have been perfectly fine with that. Not so much conservative where they just run the ball and then they punt it, but it was just kind of like, I just felt that was really like unnecessary, and it gave the Browns a chance that really did need to be, especially with how the defense was playing, where it was just kind of like, wasn't their best day at the office, so to speak. Now, the bad thing is, or even worse than that, is that I think that Bo Nix is probably more than likely going to take a huge step back in terms of the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, because I think Jaden Daniels is probably going to take a big leap this week. So Bo's going to have a lot of work to do when he comes back in terms of trying to get his name back up there and keep it a whole lot closer. But again, he got us that beautiful pass to Marvin Mims. I mean, that was just a bullet. And the fact that he got it in between, 2-3 people at that, and it just zinged in there. I mean, thing of beauty. Couldn't have played it any better. But, and then wouldn't you know it, so before we go over to Broncos OT, I had Cortland Sutton on my fantasy team 2 weeks ago, or 2-3 weeks ago, when they played against Atlanta, and he didn't do anything for me, and I lost. And then I dropped him last against the Raiders, and then he goes off for 30 points. And then I picked him up again last week against the Browns, and I lost again. He didn't play anywhere near where he did. So I'm just like in this love-hate relationship with Cortland Sutton fantasy-wise, and it's killing me, man. And this week, this is for most people, this is like the last regular season game, because the fantasy playoffs start next week for a lot of people that play up until week 17. And like my season is on life support. I need a miracle. I need like one or two things. I need to win first of all, and then I need help from something else, just for the simple fact that I don't know fantasy as much as I thought I did. But hey, as far as they can take me, then that's as far as I'll go. But ladies and gentlemen, we are into the 1 hour mark, which means it is time to talk football outside of Broncos country, which is a new segment I have called Broncos OT. Well, it's not so much new. It's a segment that I hope you guys will enjoy. So I get asked a lot about other questions about football, especially when I do Uber, from my passengers. And, it's just kind of like, what else do I think about outside the football in terms of Broncos country? So I'm going to go over this week 14 matchups, going to go down one by one. So if you guys have any comments or questions in the chat, please make sure to let it be known, and I'll try to answer them as best and quick as I can. If you're listening to us on audio after the fact and you have any questions or comments about any of my picks here, you can always hit me up at a 6'10" Mexican on Twitter. Happy to talk about any and all things football. So, but tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, we have the Green Bay Packers at 9-3 facing off against the Detroit Lions, who are 11-1. So if I'm not mistaken, this is their round 2. I think the first matchup they played in bad weather, but Detroit won that game. I am a little bit worried about Detroit. They are going into this game defensively really banged up. I mean, they unfortunately snatched Quan Alexander from the Broncos practice squad. I thought he was already a signed player. I didn't know he was on practice squad. So unfortunately, we have lost his services. And the Lions, as I said earlier, are just going to be playing like a team with just duct tape, because that's literally what they are. And they cannot afford any more injuries going as we go further into the season, and they're going up against a division rival in their first try. So the Packers are not like the best. I mean, they are at 9-3, so they are pretty good in their division. But they've almost lost a couple of games that they should have won by a mile. So Dr. Love is kind of like one of those, I don't know. The boss Johnny Bucky, just sidebar here. I have a question for you to answer in the chat. If a man speaks in the woods and there is no woman around to hear him, is he still wrong? You know what? I can't even answer that, because as a single man, I wouldn't even know. I've been single for a lot longer than I'd like to admit. But I want to say maybe, yeah, I guess. I don't know, because I'm pretty sure most women have like super hearing. So maybe one of them can hear him from a mile away and run into the woods and tell him he's wrong. I don't know. That's a hell of a riddle, though. With the Green Bay Packers, I think they're gonna. I think they might upset here. I mean, just for the simple, if the Lions defense wasn't as beat up, then I would probably give the Lions the win. Although on second thought, I mean, the Lions at home and that Ben Johnson offense is just, man, it is like a buzzsaw. But I just think that the Lions are probably going to get caught off guard here. I think that the Packers are going to squeak this one. This feels like a field goal at the last minute type of game, kind of like how the Lions against the Bears last week. I mean, the Lions should have blown the Bears out of the water, but that game came down to the wire. And if it wasn't for a cluster-headed mistake by their former head coach, we might be having a whole different conversation about the Bears. But I think that the Packers are going to win that one. That might change by the time I do my picks later. I might decide to have a last-minute decision. Like last week. Last week, I picked the Cowboys to upset to beat the Giants, and then when I heard Drew Lock was going to be the starting quarterback, I changed it to the Giants, and then I was wrong. The Cowboys still steamrolled them. So it just goes to show you how much I freaking know. But I think that the Packers are going to more than likely probably win that game, and they'll split the division with the series 1-1 with the Lions. The New York Jets at 3-9 against the Miami Dolphins, who are 5-7, another divisional game for Sunday, one of the first Sunday games. I mean, how disappointing are the Jets right now? I mean, they're literally one game away from elimination. Actually, they're more likely not even going to avoid it, even if they do somehow win this game. But the fact that they were up 21 points on Seattle going into the half this past Sunday, and they dropped the ball and let Seattle come back and beat them at home. And then the pick six was from former Jet player Leonard Williams. I mean, and getting beat by former Jet Geno Smith. I mean, you couldn't write a better episode of BS. It's just freaking crazy. But this one might be another game. I think this game probably gets decided by a touchdown at the most. I mean, even though Tua isn't playing the best with Tyreek and Waddle, Devon Achane is just running wild, man. And this might be a game that's decided by the running game instead of the passing game. But I think the Dolphins win this one, especially because they're playing in warmer weather, so they don't have to worry about the freezing cold or snow or whatever the BS was that they had to deal with in Green Bay last week, or what they would deal with if they were playing at the Meadowlands. So I think the Dolphins win that game. The Falcons at 6-6 against the Minnesota Vikings at 10-2. Now, normally we'd all be excited about a Kirk Cousins revenge game. I know I was when I first saw the schedule earlier this year, but I don't know what the hell has gotten into Cousins. Last week against the Chargers, Jesus Christ, 4 interceptions, man. You would have figured that the Falcons would have bounced back and just been going off on a tear after their bye week, and especially after the embarrassment that our Broncos put on them 2 weeks ago. But it was the complete opposite. And there's already talks about Michael Penix coming in and just playing for the remainder of the season, which would be an embarrassment because the Falcons went out and spent all this money to get Kirk Cousins and to give him the weapons and damn near a la Aaron Rodgers like type of thing, the situation. And then it just kind of, he craps the bed. Oh, and by the way, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, don't be surprised if the Jets cut ties with him and he's like the last person out of that misery of an organization to get the boot, and then they're going to end up owing him, and then Rodgers is going to go to another quarterback hungry team and probably ruin them next year. But I'm pretty sure that the Jets feel pretty stupid that they could have probably had more success if they kept Zach Wilson instead of just trading him to Denver. And the fact that they actually had better success with him last year than this year is just hysterical. But back to Falcons and Vikings. I don't know what's going on with Kirk Cousins. I'm pretty sure his Achilles injury has a lot to do with it, as a lot of people have pointed out, and I'm jumping on that bandwagon in terms of agreeing with them. Mobility-wise, I mean, he wasn't all that mobile before he got hurt, but this was probably even worse. But even then, I mean, some of those passes that you see, they're just like passes that no veteran quarterback should ever make, especially on that pick six he threw. I mean, that ball was like an hour late getting to his wide receiver. So, and by the way, sidebar, it sucks that I know Stills got a pick six out of that, but it should have been Nick Bonito that won defensive player of the week. And I'm not just saying that because Bonito is a Broncos fan, just like I am. I'm just saying it because that was just highway robbery. So, or I would have settled for Jaquan McMillan, either one. Just for the simple fact that he got a pick, fell on the ground, nobody touched him, got right back up and ran that bad boy into the end zone. I mean, I'm telling you, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's crazy. But I have the Vikings winning that game. I think if Kirk Cousins couldn't beat the Chargers defense, there's no way. The Brian Flores defense is probably going to eat that guy alive, and it's going to be a bad return home for Kirk Cousins. And Sam Darnold's probably going to show him up, and maybe he'll be lucky with Sam Darnold and not JJ McCarthy like it could be next year. The Saints at 4-8 against the New York Giants at 2-10. At this point, it doesn't matter who starts for the Giants. I mean, I thought Drew Lock was going to be a whole much better improvement, and we were going to sit here and talk about how, you should have started Drew Lock sooner, then you wouldn't have been terrible. But if Drew Lock couldn't do anything against with Malik Neighbors and a really bad Cowboys team, then I don't see him faring any better against the Saints. The Saints sucks that they lost Taysom Hill, but the only thing that probably the Giants have an advantage of, and maybe that they don't have to deal with Marshawn Lattimore because he's not with the Saints anymore. But Derek Carr should be able to do just enough, or if not him, Alvin Kamara, to just kind of beat the Giants into submission and just run right over them, even at the Meadowlands. So I'm going to pick Saints over Giants on that one. Panthers at 3-9 against the 10-2 Philadelphia Eagles. What a heartbreaker that was for Chuba Hubbard. I mean, they were so close to winning that game, and unfortunately, he gets the ball knocked out of him in field goal range, and the Bucs come back and just kick the field goal, and it sucks. And the thing I'll definitely he made earn my respect was the fact that even when the team was at 3-9, he still took that like as if the Panthers had lost a playoff game. And that to me shows a lot. It shows a lot of heart that the player really has for his team and not just goes off by a record, because there are a lot of guys that, and you're going to see it this week with the teams that are already eliminated from playoff contention the Patriots aren't playing this week, but the Raiders are out, the Jaguars are out, and I forget who's the other team that's out, the Giants. So you're going to be seeing that from a lot of them. They're just going to be like, we're already out, so who gives a ditty. But unfortunately, I don't see the Panthers winning this one. I think the Eagles, that Vic Fangio defense is going to just have a field day with the Panthers. Although I will give Bryce Young credit, he has come back and he's come along from the Bryce Young that we saw at the beginning of the year, and I guess he has the Broncos to thank for that, because the last bad game that Bryce Young had in terms of statistics was against the Broncos. He got lucky where he got that touchdown with Leggett when the Panthers defense gave him that turnover. But other than that, Bryce Young hasn't been able to do that. But ever since that Broncos game, Bryce Young has been playing pretty good, and he almost won a couple of those other games that just were decided by a last minute play. So I'm pretty sure Dave Canellis, the head coach, regrets taking him out and destroying his confidence, and now he's got a lot of work to do in trying to rebuild all that he destroyed with Andy Dalton, because you haven't even heard Dalton's name since that game either. So, and you probably won't even after the Panthers fall out of playoff contention. I imagine it's going to be this week, that there's just going to be a lot of like in-depth growth and learning experience for Bryce Young to take as he heads into his third year next year with the Panthers. But yeah, Jalen Hurts and that squad, they're going on a tear, man, in that NFC. It's going to be crazy come playoffs. The Cleveland Browns at 3-9 are going off against the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 2. So the Browns are going to walk into Heinz Field, and I think that they're probably going to maybe take the Steelers for granted again. I mean, kudos to them for winning their first matchup in the snow, but I don't think it's going to be that type of situation again in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers are going to play them even tougher than they did before, because they're going to remember what happened last time, and I don't think the Browns walk out of this one winners. Again, if you took Jerry Jeudy in fantasy, I'd say just caution. Don't expect him to put up like 30 or 40 points or whatever he put, because Levi Wallace isn't playing for the Steelers. So their cornerback is whoever they have in their corners is a lot better than Levi Wallace. But I think this is a bounce back game for Russell Wilson. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I'll admit it next week. But I think that this is where the series splits and the Steelers and Browns go their own way. And I think probably maybe the Browns get eliminated from contention, if I'm not mistaken. The Las Vegas Raiders at 2-10 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 6-6. The Raiders being officially eliminated from playoff contention, you're probably going to see a whole bunch of plays from, just like with the Giants and the other teams I mentioned that are officially out. You're going to see a lot of like plays that you'd probably never see in a regular season game, or them taking risks when they don't need to take risk, like fake punts and all that crazy jazz. But Aiden O'Connell just a minute too late. All the damage that was done by Gardner Minshew is irreparable. And the Bucs, I'm pretty sure, even with just Mike Evans, I guess the Raiders will be lucky that they don't have Godwin either. But it should be enough. It could be another big game for Bucky Irving and Mayfield. I know he had a injury designation. I don't know what it is, but if he's limited, well, no, I'm still going to give it to Tampa Bay because I can't root for the Raiders. 2-10 Jacksonville Jaguars against the 3-9 Tennessee Titans. It was ruled earlier today that Sunshine, what's his name? The quarterback that took that ugly hit, Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. I'm having a mind blow. Trevor Lawrence will not be coming back this season. He will go on IR. I mean, I think he could come back week 18, but at that point, whoa, why bother? So he's more than likely done for the rest of the season anyway. And it really didn't matter because even if he wasn't going on IR, I don't think that the Jaguars would start him. But it really sucks that they gave him that big fat contract and all they have to show for it is at this point in time 2-10. So the Tennessee Titans, they got shellacked last week by the Commanders. They did kind of make a bit of a comeback towards the end, but I think this is probably a game where I'm going to pick the Titans on this one just for the simple fact this is like a bounce back game for them. They stay alive in the playoff hunt for a little bit longer, if I'm not mistaken, unless a couple other things go that way where they could be automatically eliminated anyway. But if they lose to Jacksonville, then they have a lot of bigger issues on their hands. But I don't think it's going to come to that. Seattle Seahawks at 7-5 against the Arizona Cardinals in their second round matchup. Boy, a lot of division games this week. Pretty cool. Geno Smith and the Hawks are riding high after that Jets win last week. So, and they kind of took down Arizona with almost no problem the week before when they played in Seattle. So I don't know what's going on with Arizona. Arizona kind of like looked like they hit a hot streak and they just hit the wall hard. So they got to get something going. James Conner has been kind of absent this last couple of games. And, whatever it is they wanted with Marvin Harris Jr., hasn't been anything outside of McBride, who's been putting up big numbers for my brother in fantasy. I mean, aside from that, that's the only thing that's been really like relevant with the Cardinals. But unfortunately, you can't do it with just McBride. So they got to figure out something because that NFC West race is really, really tight between them, the Rams, and the Seahawks. The 49ers are just like about a loss or two just from falling out of, just relevancy. They need a miracle, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna pick the Seahawks for that one. I think the Seahawks are going to sweep the Cardinals. I haven't seen anything from Arizona to say that they're going to play and to try to win it. But if they do win it, then I'll be pleasantly surprised. The Bills are 10-2 against the Los Angeles Rams at 6-6. The Bills are just like on a tear, man. They're on an absolute tear. They're total opposite of what the Lions are in the NFC. The Rams, I know they got a nice win against New Orleans last week, but I don't think this is a game that they can probably win. I mean, Matthew Stafford would definitely have to bring his best game of the season just to kind of prove a point. But the Bills, I mean, they have so many weapons. They have so many ways to beat you. Josh Allen is just MVP caliber season so far. And I don't think the Rams got a couple of good weapons on defense, but I don't know if it's enough to say that they can stop Buffalo. So I'm going to pick Buffalo on that one. I think a lot of people will, but I'd be completely shocked if the Rams win that one. The Chicago Bears at the 49ers. 4-8 Bears against the 5-7 49ers. CMC is officially done for the season. He had to go on IR. He released a really heartfelt message to all the fans out there. A lot of people are already screaming to the high heavens, Madden curse, Madden curse, Madden curse, and I totally believe it. So kind of knocking on wood that none of our Broncos players make, especially Bo Nix. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see Bo Nix on the Madden cover on one hand, but on the other hand, I don't know if it's worth it. But the Bears are in a bit of a free fall. We don't know what we're going to see out of this new interim head coach, who is now the interim offensive coordinator. It's the same guy. So it'll be crazy to see. I'm going to pick the Bears to win on this one just for the simple fact that the 49ers are just so beat up, and now without CMC gone, and they also lost Mason. So it's now Garendo, and I forget the name of the other running back. So their main weapon is gone, and they're missing a couple of weapons on the field. I don't know if Kittle will be good to go. I don't know what his designation is, but I just think that the 49ers are really beat up. I think that the Bears can take advantage of it. And if they don't, and the Bears lose this one, then, man, You got a lot of explaining to do, but I think this is a game that the Bears can definitely win. So I'm going to pick them to upset the 49ers, or to beat them. I don't know if you really want to call it an upset. And then on Sunday Night Football, we have the LA Chargers at 8-4 going up against the 11-1 Kansas City Chiefs. I really wish this game would end in a tie, just so they both walk away with an L or a T or whatever you want to call it. But they don't win, is my point. But if I had to choose, I'd probably say the lesser of the two and just go with LA, because I'm so tired of Kansas City winning by a bunch of BS. What we saw on the Black Friday game last week was just terrible. I mean, it was just some of the worst officiating I've ever seen. And I mean, and the Chargers are coming off a really a big win over the Falcons themselves. So going into Arrowhead as winning it is not going to be easy, but the Bolts are really going to definitely try to make the best of it. And if they can get that win, because I think the Chiefs beat them at SoFi, if I'm not mistaken already. So they, especially if they want to stay relevant in the race. But again, I am so tired of Kansas City winning by just a bunch of sheer luck and whatever you want to call it. I mean, it sucks. It sucks to see. And while I won't be happy that the Chargers win, I'll be less mad, I guess you could say, if the Chargers win over Kansas City, because if Kansas City goes to 12-1 and then worst case they secure the first seed or whatever, if Buffalo should happen to lose or whatever, or however this thing, I already hate it. So I'm just going to say Chargers pulling for a tie. And then on Monday Night Football, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-8 against the 5-7 Dallas Cowboys. I really don't know what to say, just for the simple fact that the Bengals don't look like a 4-8 team, and the fact that they've lost all the games that they have with the amount of points they put up is just bonkers. And a lot of people blame their defense, especially last week. Russell Wilson, the Steelers just lit up that Bengals defense after that bad interception that Russell Wilson threw, or pick six. And the Cowboys, I mean, the Cowboys are just, Jesus, like nobody really thought that they were going to win that game against Washington, but they did. And a lot of the 2 weeks ago, and then last week they won against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, or against the Giants on Thanksgiving. I think that the Cowboys are getting a little too big for their britches. I think that a lot of people are thinking that Cooper Rush is the next Dak Prescott and whatnot. And, Rico Dowdle is the next young Ezekiel Elliott, and that the Cowboys defense is back and all that. But I totally disagree. I think that the Cowboys are going to get brought back to earth at Jerry World. And this could be the getting right ship game for the Bengals, because if the Bengals lose this game, they're really going to be in some trouble in terms of trying to make anything towards any noise towards trying to make the playoffs. And Biggie Bronco saying, how's it going, Biggie Bronco? Thank you so much for joining us and showing your support. Always good to see you. My high salute to you, my friend. And he says the Bengals have the worst defense in the NFL. I think they're ranked 32 out of 32 teams. Yes, I did read that too. And if you saw this past Monday night game, you could almost argue that it was the Broncos that were giving up 500 freaking yards. But we have an excuse. The Bengals really don't. And a part of me was really hoping that during the before the trade deadline, that the Broncos would make a run for Hendrickson, because I think he's a really good pass rusher. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. But going back to this to Monday Night Football game, I'm going to pick the Bengals to win that one. Although I think it'd be beneficial for the Broncos if the Bengals don't win that game, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not picking them by who I want to win. I just think about just matchups and players and stuff in my head. So I think the Bengals are going to win that again. I think they're going to bring the Cowboys back down to earth and make them realize that they're not a championship team winning team, and more than likely going to give them a wake-up call. And the bye teams for this week, the last bye of the week, by the way, are the Ravens, the Texans, the Colts, the Patriots, the Commanders, and of course your Denver Broncos. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you try to do what you can do this week in terms of what you would normally do on a Sunday. just for the simple fact that it'll be the last time you get to do it for the next 5 weeks or so. In terms of, whatever it is that you do during the off season on a Sunday, you can do it on this one because there won't be any Broncos football. So it's worth the sacrifice if you can. Because then it's going to be harder to kind of not do it next Sunday. So unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's show. I'd like to thank everybody in the chat today. The boss, Baki, Shy, Vargas, Biggie, Bronco, Jay, Dreamweaver, thank you so much for jumping in. The D-Rock, of course, I can't forget you, man. And anybody else who I may have missed, I do apologize. For those of you listening to us on audio after the fact, please make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that button so you get live notifications on every time a show goes up on the air so you never forget it. Please give us 5-star reviews, screenshot it, and send it to me at a 6'10" Mexican on Twitter. I'm always down and happy to talk about any and all things football, and it's always great to see you guys showing your support. Again, guys, please make sure you like and subscribe, share the Orange and Blue Network. Comment, subscribe, share, comment, like, show your support for all the great content we have here on Orange and Blue Network. Also, we are on the MHRT network. It's a simulcast, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't forget, subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their shows. I know my good friend Mundungus and everybody over there would be definitely happy to see your support. Your support. The boss, Johnny Baki, coming in and saying, no Broncos football for us this Sunday. Go to church. Y'all need Jesus. Oh, man, some of us more than others, my friend. Some of us more than others. For any business inquiries, you can email me at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. If you're listening to us on the Anchor or Spotify or whatever it is it's calling itself now, through the audio version, and you'd like to be a donator of the show, there is a link you can go to. Your donations would definitely be very much appreciated. And as I ask you guys, because I don't tell anybody, I ask, please make sure you continue to show your support all over Broncos country. There are a lot of great articles out there. Shout out to my friend Lindsay Bebo and Ken Booker, who write such great articles. Please make sure I encourage you to look them up, give them a follow, read up on them. They provide such great knowledge and information into Broncos country that you couldn't get anywhere else. So please make sure you go follow them, read their articles, show your support for them in Broncos country. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, for Ty the Fantasy Guy and for myself, this has been Broncos Talk on the Orange and Blue MHRT networks. And before we get out of here, there is something I've been working on. I've been working on it all damn day today. I don't know if it's going to work. I've been trying it out. So if it doesn't work out as we say goodbye, it's not my fault. It's a work in progress. I promise I'm working on it, trying to get it better. But ladies and gentlemen, even though this is not a game week for the Broncos and they're getting the much needed rest after that thrilling Monday Night Football game, that does not take away from the fact that we will not stop supporting them. So please make sure to show your support, not just for us here on the Orange and Blue and MHRT networks and here on Broncos Talk. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, for all my Spanish-speaking friends out there, can't believe I almost forgot. Viva los Broncos will be on this Friday at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain, 5 o'clock Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. So please make sure you come join me and Bronco Libre. And because he's going to tell us all about what he saw at the game, the fireworks, the displays, the momentum, everything that is Broncos country that we were not there able to see in person. So please make sure you tune in. Also, the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast, which airs every Tuesday, which is the flagship show that with Johnny Baki, Isaiah Henderson. Sometimes he does make a cameo, and Jay Weaver. Also, please remember there will not be a pregame and postgame show this week because we do have a bye week, but they will be back next week for the game against the Colts. So please keep that in mind and don't be freaked out if you don't see the notification on the YouTube about, the premiere and such. But with that being said, Broncos country, as I was saying earlier, even though the boys are taking a week off and they're getting some much needed rest, that doesn't take away from the fact that they have to take away their foot off the pedal. They have to get ready. They have to get prepared. They have to get tough. But most important, ladies and gentlemen, they have to stay not just relevant. And the one thing that they're going to do, and we have to let them do, they have to
Let's get dangerous.
pretty much. Let's get dangerous, Broncos country. I'm out of here. I've been your host. Have a good night, day, whenever it is. And as always, let's go, Broncos!